So here are my five predictions for what's going to happen to the United States over the next 20 years. Make sure you stay to the end for number five because it's probably going to shock a lot of you. But number one, what's my number one prediction? Right? The middle class will be completely wiped out. Right? We're almost there in the first place, right? Some would even say that the middle class don't even exist right now anyway, right? It's been eradicated the past 5 years, the past 10 years, right? You used to be able to make it on around $50,000, $60,000 a year, for a family of three. Now you need double that, right? And depending on what city you're in, sometimes you even need 2.5 that, right? I've already said that you need around $150,000 plus to be comfortable in America. And when I say comfortable, I'm talking about bills are paid up. You're able to pay off your student loans if you have some. You're able to pay for groceries and make sure your refrigerator is full, car insurance, car notes, right? Mortgage, rent. You're able to pay all of these things with no worries at all and still have some money left over to put into savings and still have some money left over for emergencies and so on and so forth. In the next 20 years, the middle class will be done, right? In the next 20 years, probably sooner than that. I'm just trying to give it a little buffer, trying to give you ninja some hope, right? But we're going to see more and more the haves and the have-nots. There won't be a middle. There won't be a middle area, right? There won't be a gray area. The middle class was that gray area, right? It was that middle point where you can grind your way up from poverty, or if you got knocked down from the high societies of life, you could almost always end up at that middle point, middle class, and be able to be somewhat comfortable. But those days are over with, right? Number two, there will be more people than jobs available. Right now, this is a big one. This feeds into basically the eradication of the middle class. Right, this feeds into people not being able to afford homes, especially Gen Z. What we really have to focus these talks on is the younger generation. Right, so you can throw younger millennials in there as well, right? I guess you can say under 50 years old, right? That's many of these things may still affect, but for everybody else, this kind of really don't even matter because they're headed out the door. They're 1 foot in the grave, right? Or they'll be extremely elderly once we get to these points in time. But there will be more people than jobs available, right? AI and automation is only speeding up, right? Technology is only speeding up, right? Technology ensures that technology improves technology at a faster rate, right? So what does that mean? As we proceed through the years, right, technology is going to get better, right? It's going to become more efficient. It's going to become more accurate. So what does that mean, right? Bye bye human capital. They don't need you. Guess what? You have to take off days. You get sick. You need personal days. You calling out of work, right? AI doesn't do that, right? They only need to pay a monthly subscription for him or her or whatever it is, right? They only need to pay a monthly subscription, right? They don't have to pay as nearly as much that they have to pay for you. So guess what? More companies are going to implement it. More and more companies are going to implement it. They're going to see the benefits of it. And the jobs that do allow human beings to work in there, right? For the ones who don't have businesses, for the ones who haven't probably upped and left and went somewhere else overseas, right? For the ones who are left, they're going to be fighting over the scraps. They're going to be fighting over the last human jobs available. Mark my words, right? And these are going to be people who, in mass, don't have many skills, right? And that's even today. Many Americans lack real skills, right? And that's why we have, immigrants. They come in and they even the low skill work. We have immigrants coming into America who are not only doing the low skill work, they're also doing the high skill work as well, right? When you look at some of the doctors, right, available in the United States, what are their names, right? Is either some Indian name, Rashid in them, right? Or some Asian name, Chun Li in them, or is some African ninja, right? Nwewe in them, right? The immigrants are coming in. right? With skills, with real skills, and they're able to dominate these. And you have Jorge and them, they work in the farms, they picking the dang on strawberries, right? From the top, from the very top to the very bottom, right? Americans are not doing these jobs. Americans want to stay in that in between, right? That in between is being eradicated. So either you're going to get your skills up, right? Formulate businesses that's going to help other businesses or help other people, or you're going to be at the very bottom, right? Fighting over the scraps, fighting over the leftovers because you have no real meaningful skills, right? That is what's going to happen, right? No jobs are going to be available, right? So you better get to it, right? Number three, right? We've already talked about this many of times, right? Number three, relationships and marriages are going to become obsolete, right? And this feeds into the first two, right? Why does this feed into the first two? Well, guess what? If the middle class become eradicated, right? Many women lose that safety net that they had outside of the government, right? Women always had the safety net of some man coming to save them. Guess what? If men have no jobs, right? If there's no jobs available for the majority of men, right? How can any man save a woman, right? The middle class is going to be completely wiped out. So guess what? A lot of men are going to be at the bottom, right? And what does that mean? In return, men can't get married because guess what? They can't afford the basic necessities, let alone a family, let alone a woman, right? And then I guess you could throw in, you 50-50 ninjas, but more and more women are not going to want to do that, right? Because even with 50-50, right, you're not going to be able to keep up with how life is just it's just becoming more expensive and more expensive and more expensive, right? So you're going to have more women who are going to be opting out, more men as well. You're going to have more men and women who are opting out of relationships, opting out of marriages because it costs, right? And then listen, if you mess around and knock her up and she gets pregnant, guess what? Now you got a little one on the way, and if you couldn't even afford to keep up with your old lady, let alone keep up with a child, right? But you're going to have more and more people, right, exile themselves out of relationship, exile themselves out of dating, which we're already seeing already. And the current marriage stats that we have right now, once boomers die, listen, all hell is going to break loose. Once boomers die, we're going to see the real statistics, right? Once boomers die and Gen X age out, we're going to see the real statistics. Millennials have been divorced into kingdom come, right? Over half of them ninjas have been married and divorced, right? And then up under that, after millennials, you have Gen Z, and then I guess Gen Alpha is after Gen Z. These ninjas are not getting married at all. These chicks are straight up 304s for the most part. They don't care about marriages. They don't care about, and I've talked to many of these women and guys as well. Many of these women, they're not even traditional. They don't care to have kids. And if you don't care to have kids, literally, most don't see any point of getting with a man anyway. Many of them want to stay independent. And if they do deal with a man, they only want to be dealing with the top tier men. So guess what? The relationship dynamics is going to become even more exacerbated. It's going to become even more transactional. And the women are going to be dealing with only the men that can afford to take them out, the men that can afford to dish them out some money, right? Those are going to be the only men that they're dealing with, right? 80% of men are going to be left to the scraps, to the bones, right? To the graveyards, ninja. That's how marriage and relationships, you think is bad now, wait until 20 years from now. Wait until 20 years from now. It's going to be asinine, right? Number 4, which I've talked about a bit so far, the two-tier system is going to be even more exacerbated, right? It's going to be even more evident, right? And what do I mean when I say two-tier system, right? It's going to be the haves and the have-nots. That's it. We're going to stay, the United States is going to become a society, right? There is no middle points. There is no gray areas, right? We're going to see over the next 20 years, there's going to be poverty, right, to a magnitude that we haven't seen in the United States in modern day, right? You're just going to have poverty and you're going to have everybody else, right? And I believe it's going to go so far as, right, crime is definitely going to get worse, right? Homelessness is definitely going to get worse, right? We're going to see things get really worse before they start taking action, and they're like, okay, we're going to section off these people. Right? We're going to section off. You got to have a digital ID to get into this area over here. Right? There are going to be bridges and checkpoints. Listen, man. Look, y'all thinking I'm talking about some Futurama type junk. Listen, it's going to happen. Right? There are going to be checkpoints. Right? Many in every part of the United States, there are going to be checkpoints where they keep people in their neighborhoods, right? The only people who are going to have real mobility is people with money, the haves, right? The only people that are going to be able to take flights in and out of the United States are going to be the haves, right? The ones who are able to go out to restaurants and malls and go wherever they want to go, it's going to be the haves, right? The have-nots going to be stuck in their poverty-stricken area. The have-nots going to be stuck in what used to be the middle class areas. They're not going to have the same mobility. They're not going to be able to catch a flight and go overseas if you ain't doing it right now, right? Those days are going to be over with, right? Because you're not going to be able to afford it. It's not that somebody is forcing you, but technically they're forcing you because they're pricing you out. Right. And also, you're going to have a digital ID. You're going to have some kind of toll. There's going to be some kind of toll payment for you to be able to cross that bridge to get over to the other side of the tracks. That's where we're going. Mark my words. Right. There's going to be a two-tier system. Right. If it isn't already there, I believe that we're already there. It's just not evident right now. Right now, everybody's getting drained for everything that they have right now. Right? When you talk about inflation, when you talk about cost of living, when you talk about the eradication of traditional jobs, when you talk about people can't find jobs, when you talk about the breakdown of the nuclear family, when you talk about that the younger generation don't see marriage as viable anymore, wait until we get into the future. This is the beginning of that. This is the beginning of that, right? Give it another 10, 15, 20 years. We're going to see it more evident. It's going to be right in our face, right? That's number 4. Okay, and number 5, right? This is a great surprise right here, right? Many of you are going to be looking like, what? After all what you said, that's what you think is going to happen? Yep. Number 5, the U.S. dollar is going to stay strong. Yep. Right? Listen, I get up here and talk about America this and America that, and these things are very true, right? But after, more evaluation and after doing more research, the U.S. dollar will stay strong for quite some time, right? We do have counter currency rising up. We do have the rise of cryptocurrency. We do have things like BRICS, right, trying to compete with the U.S. dollar. But the fact still remains is that the U.S. dollar is still the dominating force across the globe right now, right? The majority of the world, 60 to 70%, are still doing business with U.S. currency, right? There are many countries that hold wealth in the U.S. stock exchanges, right? There's many countries that, do business and, they rely on the United States to keep their countries afloat, right? The world is not done, right, with the United States dollar. They may be done with the United States and its outrageous politics. They may be done with the United States and its arrogancy, right? They may be done on that part, but until BRICS can actually compete, until cryptocurrency actually creates some form of sovereignty, right? The U.S. dollar will remain the dominating player for probably the next 50 years. Right, to be honest with you, unless something change, if war changes that, if something drastic will have to change that. Something very drastic will have to change the fact that the U.S. dollar is no longer the dominating reserve currency. But as far as I can see right now, I don't see the U.S. dollar becoming, just a ghost in the wind, right? Just overnight. That's not going to happen. I don't see it happening in the next 10 years. I don't really see it happening in the next 20 years. I give it another 50 years, right? But you never know. Things happen in the United States, man. Things happen all over the globe. You just never know what can happen. BRICS could have taken off in the next 20 years. We don't know. But over the next 20 years, definitely, for sure, the U.S. dollar will remain the dominating force, right? And why do I say that? Why, after everything that I've seen, right? How can you still say that, right? Listen, In conclusion, the United States no longer need the middle class to keep the stocks afloat, right? United States no longer need the middle class, right? The middle class used to be a key player in the creation of wealth in this country for the elites. So we've gotten to a point where there's been so much wealth created in this country, right? For these corporate giants, they no longer need you nor I anymore, right? The wealth, right? The wealth now belongs to the top percentage of people, right? They own more wealth than the bottom 80, 70% of people, right? The bottom 80 to 70% of people don't even own 10% of the stock market. So you got to understand, they own most of the stock market, right? The halves, yeah, them. They own most of the stock market. They own most of the wealth. They own most of the real estate, right? They own all of this stuff, right? The boomers, right? They own all of this stuff. They've created wealth a long time ago, right? While Gen Z is scraping by, millennials still scraping by, right? They own all of this stuff, right? They don't need you to work anymore. They don't need to invest your 401k anymore. They don't need it anymore, right? They can create this. They can create productivity with AI, right? They can mimic your productivity at a better rate, more efficient, more accurate than you ever could, right? To keep the shareholders happy. That's all they have to do. They no longer need you to work. That's why they're so happy, right, to go ahead and roll out all of this stuff, because they know they no longer need you, right? If they needed you, they would act accordingly. They would be trying to get you into the door. They would be trying to hire you, right? They'll be trying to hide, behind, the wall. They're no longer trying to hide anymore. They're telling you straight up, yeah, we don't need you ninjas anymore. Right, so yeah, y'all can go on and cry and find something else to do, go and compete, whatever. But we no longer need your services here anymore, Ninja. Right? We done hire AI and all of these, iRobot in them. Right? We no longer need you. Right? So that being said, right, if they can continue the same productivity, right, and they can, basically sell these products. People are asking, well, if nobody has a job, who's going to buy all this stuff? Well, that's a good question, but then that's where immigrants come in at, right? That's where you have places like India come in at. That's where you have places like Africa come in at, Latin America come in at, countries that have not been, first world consumer driven countries, right? These are countries that within these continents, right, they have never experienced the consumerism at the same level as the United States. So what do? You bring these people in, right? You have them oversee the technology, or you keep them where they at, right? You put jobs in these countries, because best believe to hire an American is expensive as it is. That's one of the reasons why they want to roll out AI and automation and all that stuff too, because to hire an American is extremely expensive when they can hire an Indian, they can hire African, a Chinese, right? And they can pay them to do more work, right, for less pay. So I've said this before. The Indians, they're going to become the new consumer class, right? The Africans, they're going to become the new consumer class. The Latin Americans, they're going to become the new consumer class. The elites are done with Europe and America. They're done, right? They've already drained all the money that they could, right? Now it's time to go on to bigger and better things. These people are trying to become quadrillionaires, Ninja, right? They've already became basically trillionaires with draining all the wealth in the United States and Europe. They've already done it. So guess what's next? Right? To the moon. That's what's next. That's what's next. So that's how they're gonna do it. They're gonna pay the Indians, the Africans, the Latin Americans, everybody who never stayed in the first world country, right? They're gonna pay them the wage that they want to pay them, right? Just so they can buy the products that they're making with their wages. That's how that's gonna go. And the cycle will continue. Right? Let me know what y'all think down in the comment section. Do you think I'm right? Right? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Tell me what y'all think down in the comment section, to make sure you like, share this video, comment down below, subscribe if you're new. And this was an After Pill, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.